They say the worst pain is not from the surgeon's scalpel. It is from the stab in the back you never see coming. I am 58, and I just had a hip replacement. But when I faked a relapse to go back to the hospital, it was not to save my leg, it was to save my life. Because what I saw from the hidden security camera was not care, it was a plan. And the reality of what my son and daughter-in-law were doing was sicker than any disease. My name is Margaret Thompson, but my friends call me Margot. I am 58 years old, and until recently, I was a senior data analyst at Viridian Dynamics. I took early retirement after a corporate restructuring cleared out most of my department. It was supposed to be a new chapter, a chance to enjoy the house in suburban Denver I had paid off years ago. Instead, I found myself flat on my back, recovering from a total hip replacement. The surgery was, I was told, a complete success, but the recovery was critical, and I could not do it alone. My son, Liam, and his wife, Sarah, insisted on moving in temporarily to take care of me. At first, their attention was a balm. The house, usually quiet, filled with the sounds of their activity. Sarah, who always seemed to be scrolling through wellness blogs, prepared meticulous, bland meals designed for optimal healing. Chicken broth that tasted more like the can than the chicken, steamed vegetables, and endless cups of herbal tea. Liam, ever the dutiful son, would brace himself to help me with the humiliating physical therapy exercises. His face tight with a forced patience as I gripped the walker, my new hip screaming in protest. "You just focus on getting better, Mom," Liam would say, his hand hovering over my shoulder, never quite touching it. I was grateful. Truly. But gratitude quickly began to curdle into claustrophobia. The air in my own home grew thick, heavy with the smell of disinfectant spray and their cloying concern. They began managing my medication schedule with the precision of prison guards. A small plastic cup with 2 pills at 8 a.m., another at noon, another at 6 p.m. "You need to rest, Margot," Sarah would insist, her voice bright and brittle. "Do not worry about a single thing. We have got it all under control." Control was the operative word. The shift was subtle at first. I was sitting in the recliner when the mail carrier arrived. Sarah collected the bundle from the slot. I saw the distinctive blue envelope from my bank. "I will take that, Sarah," I said, reaching out. "Oh, it is just bills and junk, Mom," she replied, smiling, already walking past me. "I will sort it out for you. No need for you to stress." She walked into my home office, the room where I managed my finances, my investments, my entire life, and I heard the distinct click of the door lock. "Just keeping it tidy," she called out when she re-emerged a few minutes later, holding nothing. A few days later, my phone rang. It was on the end table, just beyond my reach. Before I could even ask Liam to pass it to me, he had picked it up. "Mom's residence," he answered, his voice adopting a professional, almost medical tone. He listened for a moment. "Oh, hi, Brenda. She is actually resting right now. The pain medication makes her a little confused. You know. I will let her know you called." He hung up before I could object. Confused, I was perfectly lucid. I was just in pain. Then came the water. Every night, around 9 p.m. Sarah would bring me my last dose of pain medication, accompanied by a tall glass of water. "To help you sleep through the night," she would say. I noticed it had a slightly metallic, bitter aftertaste, but I chalked it up to the pills dissolving. The sleep it brought was not rest, it was an abyss. I would fall asleep almost instantly, a heavy, drugged slumber that left me waking up past 10 in the morning feeling groggy, my head filled with cotton. One afternoon, the fog lifted earlier than usual. The house was quiet. I thought they had gone out. I managed to ease myself out of the recliner and, gripping my walker, shuffled silently toward the kitchen for some real water that did not taste like old pennies. I stopped just before the doorway, hearing their voices. They were whispering, sharp and urgent. "She will not even notice," Liam said. His voice was low, unrecognizable. "We just increase the dose slowly. It is subtle. By the time we call Dr. Harris, she will look completely consistent with the file." A cold dread, sharper than any surgical pain, washed over me. Consistent with the file. What file? I backed away, my hands shaking so badly the walker rattled against the hardwood floor. They did not hear me. I made it back to my chair just as Sarah walked in, her face a mask of practiced sweetness. "Oh, you are awake," she chirped. "You slept for a bee. I was just about to get your afternoon pills. Consistent with the file." The phrase landed on me with the weight of a lead apron. I was not a person to them anymore. I was a case, a file, a problem to be managed. My recovery was just a script, and they were ensuring I played my part. The dread was cold and sharp. That night, when Sarah brought in the small plastic cup with my pills and the tall glass of water, I smiled as weakly as I could. "Thank you, Sarah. You are so good to me." I put the pills in my mouth, took a large sip of the bitter, metallic water, and made a show of swallowing. The moment she turned to fluff my pillows, I used my tongue to push the dissolving, chalky tablets into the pocket of my cheek. I held them there, the taste vile, until she finished her nightly fussing and left the room, closing the door softly behind her. The instant I heard her footsteps retreat down the hall, I spat the gummy paste into a tissue I had hidden in my robe. I did the same with the water, taking only the smallest sip before dumping the rest into the soil of the large potted fern near my chair. That poor plant was probably rotting at the roots, but my mind, for the first time in weeks, was becoming sharp. The clarity that returned was terrifying. I was a prisoner. My body was the cell, my hip the faulty lock, and my son and daughter-in-law were the wardens. I confirmed my isolation the next day, pretending I needed to stretch. I gripped my walker and shuffled to my home office. I tried the brass knob. Locked. It had never been locked in the 20 years I had lived in this house. This room was my financial center. My tax documents, my investment portfolio, my will. It was all in there, and I was locked out. Fine. I would use my tablet. I kept it on my nightstand, charged and ready. I powered it on, the screen's bright light momentarily blinding. I tapped the icon for my email. "Cannot connect to network." I frowned and opened the settings menu. My home network. Margot Manor was gone. In its place was a new, secured network, L&S Secure. They had changed it. I typed in my old password. Access denied. I tried my birthday. Access denied. I tried my late husband's name. The cat's name. Password 123. Nothing. They had cut me off. I was physically and digitally entombed in my own home. The panic was a physical thing, a tightening in my chest that had nothing to do with medication. I could not walk out. I could not email for help. Liam and Sarah controlled the flow of all information, all food, all medication, and all the locks. I needed to get out. But I could not just walk out the front door. I needed a reason they could not refuse. I needed a crisis they could not manage themselves. I needed an ambulance. My mind raced. How do you escape a hospital bed in your own home? You create a medical emergency. And for that, I needed an ally on the outside, someone they could not dismiss as a confused friend. Brenda, my best friend for 30 years. Brenda was a retired emergency room nurse who possessed the world's most sensitive bullshit detector. Liam knew her well, and he knew she did not suffer fools. She was the one person he could not easily manage. I had a secret weapon. Years ago, after a severe blizzard knocked out the power and cell service for 3 days, I had bought a cheap, prepaid flip phone. A burner phone, as the kids would say. It lived in its original box, fully charged, in the back of my bathroom linen closet, hidden beneath a stack of old towels. It was my just-in-case device. Liam and Sarah, with their sleek smartphones and constant scrolling, would never conceive of such an antique. That afternoon, I heard them in the backyard. They were arguing, their voices sharp, about the resale value of my patio furniture. This was my chance. Every step from the recliner to the bathroom was a calculated agony. I gripped the walker, my knuckles white, and hauled myself across the floor, my hip screaming in genuine protest. I locked the bathroom door, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. I dug under the towels and found the box. I flipped open the small plastic phone. The dim green glow of the screen was the most beautiful light I had ever seen. I dialed Brenda's number. She answered on the second ring. "Margot, is that you? I have been so worried." I pitched my voice low, injecting a tremor that was not entirely faked. "Brenda, listen to me. I cannot talk long. Something is wrong, not just confused. Something is wrong with my surgery. I think the implant is failing. I need you." "Margot, what is the doctor saying? What is Liam?" "They do not listen," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "They keep telling everyone I'm confused from the medicine. Brenda, I am scared. I need to get to the hospital, but they will not take me unless it is bad. I am going to make it bad. Tonight. Be ready." "Margot, what are you planning?" I hung up. I did not have time to explain. I erased the call from the log, powered down the phone, and buried it back under the towels. That night, I refused the sleepy water. I told Sarah it was making my stomach upset. She looked annoyed, her thin lips pressing into a line, but she took it away. I waited in the dark, every nerve in my body vibrating. I listened to the house settle. I heard Liam snoring lightly from their room down the hall. I waited until the clock on my nightstand read 2:17 a.m. It was time. I eased my legs over the side of the bed. I did not reach for my walker. I planted my bare feet on the cold hardwood floor. I stood up, putting my full, deliberate weight on my new hip. A genuine, white-hot spike of pain shot from my femur to my spine. I gasped, my vision tunneling. Good. Use it. I took one step toward the bathroom, then a second. On the third step, I let my leg collapse beneath me. I did not try to catch myself. I crashed to the floor, my hip taking the full, brutal impact. The scream that ripped out of my throat was not fake. It was the sound of real pain, amplified by pure, calculated terror. Footsteps thundered down the hall. The door flew open, slamming against the wall. "Mom!" Liam's voice was high with panic. They found me twisted on the floor, clutching my leg. I tried to get up. I gasped, forcing the words out. Tears, some real and some strategic, streamed down my face. I tried to get to the bathroom. The pain. "Liam, it is excruciating." "I will get your pills," Sarah said, already turning toward the kitchen, her voice flat. "No," I shouted, the command stopping her cold. "No more pills. It is the implant. Something is wrong with the implant. It feels like it slipped." I panted, my chest heaving. "You have to take me to the hospital. Now." "Mom, it is the middle of the night." Liam stammered, his hands hovering uselessly over me. "Maybe it is just a muscle spasm. Let's get you back in bed." "Call Brenda," I commanded, cutting him off with all the authority I had left. "She knows my surgeon. She knows the staff. Call her. Tell her I fell. Get me to the hospital. Please. It hurts." The combination of raw agony and ice-cold command in my voice finally broke through his hesitation. He looked at Sarah, his face pale and frightened. He fumbled for his phone and dialed 911. As Liam was on the phone, his voice shaking as he gave the dispatcher our address. I watched Sarah. She was not looking at me. Her eyes were darting around the room, her mind clearly racing. Then, in a single, fluid motion, she bolted. She did not run to the front door to wait for the ambulance. She ran straight to my locked office, pulled a key from her pocket, and disappeared inside. A few seconds later, she emerged, clutching a thick manila folder to her chest. She sprinted to their bedroom, shoved the folder inside, and then ran back to my side, her face a perfect mask of daughterly concern. They were not just worried about my health. They were terrified of what the paramedics, what the hospital might find. They were hiding the evidence. The ambulance ride was a blur of fluorescent lights and bumps that sent jolts of real pain through my hip. Liam sat in the attendant's seat, his face a mask of anxious concern that I now saw as fraudulent. Sarah had followed in their car, clutching the manila folder. When they wheeled me through the automatic doors of the emergency department, the organized chaos of a hospital night shift enveloped me. And there, standing by the triage desk, was Brenda. Her short, grey hair was impeccable, her arms crossed, her retired nurse's posture radiating an authority that instantly calmed the room. Liam rushed to her. "Brenda, thank God. She just fell out of bed. She said the pain was..." Brenda's eyes found mine over Liam's shoulder. She saw the terror I could not hide. A triage nurse pushed past Liam. "Margaret Thompson, 58, post-op hip replacement, reported fall and severe joint pain." They wheeled me into a curtained bay. Liam and Sarah hovered at the entrance, their faces pale. Brenda swept past them, pulling the curtain shut. "How bad is it?" Brenda asked, her voice low, her professional gaze sweeping over my leg. I grabbed her wrist. My voice was a hoarse whisper. "It is not the hip. I am fine. The fall was real. But I forced it." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "Margot, what are you?" "Listen to me," I hissed, the urgency making me breathless. "There is no time. They are poisoning me. They are drugging me to make me confused. They have locked me out of my own office. They are hiding documents. I saw Sarah grab a folder before the ambulance came. Brenda's face went from concerned to granite. This was the ER nurse I knew. She did not question me. She processed the data. They think I am confused, I whispered. Use it. Do not let them sedate me. I need to stay here. I need to be observed. I need to get them out of my house. Brenda nodded once. She smoothed my hair back, her expression softening into one of professional concern just as the curtains swished open. Dr. Evans, the physician on duty, entered, followed by Liam and Sarah. Mrs. Thompson, I hear you had a nasty fall, he said, looking at my chart. Before I could answer, Brenda stepped forward, intercepting him. Doctor, I am Brenda Riley, a retired RN and Mrs. Thompson's healthcare proxy. I am very concerned. Her son reports she has been increasingly confused since she got home. The pain medication seems to be affecting her cognition. Liam and Sarah exchanged a look. I saw the faint, sickening flicker of relief in Sarah's eyes. Is that so? Dr. Evans said, turning to me. Margot, do you know where you are? I looked at him, letting my eyes go unfocused, just as I had felt when I was drinking the drugged water. I hurt my leg. Did I fall? Liam? Brenda touched the doctor's arm. This is what I mean. She is coherent 1 minute and then completely disoriented. Given the fall, I am worried about the implant, but I am more worried about her baseline mental state. I think a 48-hour observation is warranted. We need to rule out a post-surgical infection or a reaction to the analgesics. Liam chimed in, his voice dripping with false sincerity. Whatever you think is best, Doctor. We are just so worried. Dr. Evans nodded. A 48-hour hold for observation makes sense. We will get x-rays to check the hardware. But I agree. Let's see what is going on. We will get her admitted. And, Brenda added, her voice firm, she needs absolute rest, no stress. I think it is best if she has no visitors. It just seems to agitate her confusion. Sarah's smile was almost imperceptible. Of course, she said. We would not want to agitate her. We will just go home and wait for your call. The relief on their faces was palpable. They thought they had successfully dumped their confused problem at the hospital for 2 days. They left, promising to bring me toiletries in the morning. The second their footsteps faded, Brenda turned to me. Okay, Margot. You have 48 hours. What is the plan? I have to see inside my house, I said. They thought I was just an old woman. They forgot I was a data analyst. I have an old Wise security system. 3 cameras. They unplugged the main ones, I am sure. But I bet they forgot the one in the living room, hidden on the bookshelf. Brenda's mind was already moving. You cannot stay here. They will move you upstairs. A nurse will be in every hour. You need to be invisible. I have an idea. She left the bay and returned 2 minutes later. I just told the charge nurse I am taking you for an extended MRI downstairs. I said you are claustrophobic and might need light sedation, so it could take a while. That buys us at least 3 hours. She grabbed a wheelchair and a staff access elevator keycard she still had. Let's go. We are breaking you out. She wheeled me down a staff-only hallway, through a set of double doors, and out a side exit used for ambulance crews. The cold night air hit my face. The first clean air I had breathed in weeks. It tasted like freedom. Brenda's apartment was 10 minutes away, a high-rise with a clear view of my neighborhood. She got me settled on her sofa with her laptop. My house, I said, my fingers flying across the keys, my old skills returning. I logged into my Wise account. They changed the Wi-Fi, but the camera system has a cellular backup. They did not know. The feed flickered, then resolved. It was my living room. The image was crystal clear, and Liam and Sarah were there. They were not sad. They were not worried. They were celebratory. Liam was holding the antique porcelain vase my late husband, Mark, had bought me in Kyoto. It was my most treasured possession. This one is fragile, but the appraiser said it is an easy $5,000, Sarah said, tapping on her tablet. Put it on the emergency liquidation list. We need the cash flow before the bank flags the account. Liquidation. They were liquidating my life. $5,000. The words echoed in the silence of Brenda's apartment. I watched, my vision narrowing, as Liam, my son, handled the vase Mark had carried by hand from Kyoto, discussing its price like it was last year's appliance. Brenda's hand flew to her mouth. Margot. My home had been turned into a showroom. The living room camera showed Sarah arranging my collection of antique silver on the dining table, grouping items with small numbered tags. They were staging it. Switch to the entryway camera, I said, my voice barely a whisper. My mind was sharp, analytical, detached. The pain in my hip was a distant signal, drowned out by the roar of adrenaline. Brenda clicked the icon. The feed changed. We were just in time. The doorbell rang. Liam, wiping his hands on his jeans, opened it. A man I had never seen before stood on my porch. He was slick, dressed in a sharp, dark suit, and carrying a thin leather briefcase. He looked like a predator. Julian, thanks for coming so fast, Liam said, shaking the man's hand. The market waits for no one. Liam? The man. Julian replied. His voice was smooth, almost oily. Let's see the inventory. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning everything, calculating. This was no friend. This was an appraiser. Liam, my boy, who I had taught to ride a bike on this very street, began the tour of my life's possessions. As you can see, the artwork is mostly Colorado regionalists, Liam said, gesturing to the paintings on the wall. Sarah has the paperwork for all of them. Julian nodded, tapping on a tablet. Good. Provenance helps. The mahogany sideboard is 19th century original brasses, Liam continued. And the jewellery, Sarah has it all catalogued in the office. The office, I repeated. The camera in the living room was angled toward the office door. I could see Sarah inside, her back to the camera, but I could not see what she was doing. But I could hear it. Over the murmur of Julian and Liam discussing the merits of my Persian rugs, I heard a distinct, rhythmic sound. A mechanical whirring followed by a sharp click-thwack, click-thwack, click-thwack. I knew that sound. It was the electronic bill counter I kept in the office safe, the one I used for organizing the church bake sale funds. Were click-thwack, click-thwack. They were counting cash, my cash, from my safe. Brenda stared at the screen. Margot, look at them. They are not packing things. They are not wrapping anything. Julian is just taking notes. This is not a garage sale. This is an auction, or a high-speed estate sale. They are liquidating you. She was right. They were systematically dismantling my entire net worth. The violation was absolute. My body, my home, my finances. I grabbed Brenda's laptop. I have to get into my accounts. My fingers, stiff with rage, flew across the keyboard. I typed the address for my bank, my username, my password. I hit enter. The screen flashed bright red. Access denied. The credentials provided do not match our records. He changed it, I said, the blood draining from my face. He changed my password. I tried the forgot password link. It asked for the security question. What was the name of your first pet, buddy? I whispered. I typed it in. Security question answered incorrectly. They had changed that, too. They had locked me out of my own money. My email, I stammered. My last hope. The bank notifications. They would go to my email. I opened a new tab. Gmail. My account. Password incorrect. Your password was changed 26 hours ago. 26 hours ago. I was in the hospital. I was being observed. They had waited until I was trapped. Then they had seized everything. I was digitally erased. On the camera feed. Julian was finishing his assessment. He looked pleased. He snapped his briefcase shut. Excellent, Julian said, his voice crisp. It is all high quality. The liquidation of these primary assets. He gestured broadly to my living room. Combined with the lump sum payment we already processed from Willow Creek, will be more than enough. Liam let out a breath he seemed to have been holding. It will be enough to cover it before they notice. Absolutely, Julian said with a thin smile. We will have sufficient funds to cover the reverse mortgage in full before the bank's fraud department even flags the forgery. A perfectly clean transaction. By the time anyone looks twice, the house will be leveraged, the assets will be gone, and your mother will be comfortably settled. Reverse mortgage. I whispered the words. They felt alien in my mouth. My house was paid off. Mark and I had held a small, silly ceremony to burn the mortgage papers nearly a decade ago. It was my single greatest asset, my fortress. You cannot take a reverse mortgage on a paid-off house unless you are the owner, or unless you have fraudulently secured the power to act as the owner. Brenda seized on the other name, her voice tight with a different kind of alarm. Willow Creek Estates. She looked up from the laptop, her eyes wide. Margot, that is not some resort. My former mother-in-law looked at that place right before she passed. It is a high-end assisted living facility. And by that, I mean it is a high-end prison for people with cognitive issues. My blood ran cold. Lump sum payment, I repeated, the financial term Julian had used slotting sickeningly into place. Exactly, Brenda said, already typing furiously. They demand a massive lump sum payment up front if the patient does not have long-term care insurance, which you do not. We are talking 6 figures, non-refundable. The horror of the previous moments was evaporating, replaced by a cold, methodical rage. I was no longer a victim, trapped in a chair. I was an analyst, and this was a data set. Search for it, Brenda, Willow Creek. The website loaded, all soft watercolors and photographs of smiling, white-haired seniors playing chess. But the language, my God, the language. Specializing in compassionate care for memory impairment. A secure, safe environment for those who may wander. Comprehensive custodial oversight. It is a locked facility, Margot, Brenda said, her voice grim as she scrolled. It is where families put people they cannot handle, people with behavioral problems or advanced cognitive decline. They were not planning for my recovery. They were not planning for me to get better. They were planning to dispose of me. They were going to park me in a 5-star asylum, bleed my accounts dry to pay for it, and live in my house. On the camera feed, Julian, the slick appraiser, was handing Liam a thin folder. "This is the last of the paperwork," Julian said, his voice quiet but clear. "The loan is funded, the title is clear. We just need her final signature on the asset transfer agreement. But, as we discussed, for this to be ironclad, you must ensure she is really non-compos mentis when she signs non-compos mentis, not of sound mind. Liam, my son, my only child," ran a hand through his hair. "She is still at the hospital. They are observing her for 2 days. At that moment, Sarah walked out of the office. She must have been listening from the doorway. She was smiling, holding the small electronic bill counter in her hand. "That is the easiest part," she said, her voice bright with contempt. "She is already halfway there. That Dr. Harris is a miracle worker. His medication regimen has been working perfectly. She has been loopy and confused for weeks. Another day or 2 of this, and she will sign her own death warrant if we ask her to. A new name, a new variable. Dr. Harris." The name clicked. I knew a Dr. Harris. A young, ambitious doctor at a new concierge practice. Liam had recommended him, insisting I see him just to coordinate care before my surgery. He had made a house call, a charming, modern physician who had reviewed my pre-op prescriptions. He had been the one to prescribe the stronger pain medication. He had been the one to add the mild sedative for sleep. He was in on it. They had a complicit doctor. The entire plan unfolded in my mind. A perfect, horrifying schematic. 1. Find a doctor willing to falsify a diagnosis of cognitive decline. 2. Use that falsified diagnosis to secure a fraudulent power of attorney, likely from the stack of tidy mail Sarah had collected. 3. Use that illegal power to take out a reverse mortgage on my paid-off house. 4. Hire a shady appraiser, Julian, to help them liquidate my valuable assets, the art, the jewelry, the silver. 5. Use the cash from the mortgage and the asset sale to pay the non-refundable 6-figure deposit to Willow Creek, securing my spot. 6. And then, the final, brutal step. I looked at Brenda, my eyes wide, the pieces connecting with the force of a physical blow. The pain pills that made me groggy. The sleepy water with its bitter, metallic taste. The confusion that Liam kept reporting to my friends. They were not trying to manage my pain. "Brenda," I said, the words falling like ice chips in the quiet apartment. They were creating my symptoms. It was not to help me. It was not even just to control me. It was to induce the confusion. They were actively, medically, and systematically poisoning me. They were manufacturing the evidence, building a case, creating the loopy old woman that Dr. Harris could diagnose and that the state would agree to have committed. The file Liam was worried about. It was my file, my medical forgery. The reality was not that I was sick. The reality was that they were meticulously, methodically, and financially burying me alive. "I have to get in there. I have to get into that office," I said, my voice low and hard. We were still watching the laptop. Julian had left, and Liam and Sarah were in the kitchen, their voices muted. "Margot, that is insane," Brenda countered, her face pale. "You just had major surgery. You faked a fall that actually hurt you. We are not breaking into your house. We go to the police right now." "With what?" I shot back, gesturing at the screen. A grainy video of my son holding a vase. An appraiser visiting them talking about a mortgage. It is circumstantial. They will say I am a confused old woman, just like they planned. They have a doctor's file to prove it. I need the documents. Brenda, I need the physical evidence. The camera cannot see inside the office. That is where they are keeping it. The manila folder Sarah hid. Brenda knew I was right. The word of a confused patient against a charming son and a collaborating doctor was a losing battle. We sat in the dark, watching the camera feed. We watched them eat my food at my dining room table, using their phones, occasionally laughing. The casual way they inhabited my space, the way they had supplanted me, was a violation that stoked my anger into a cold, hard point. At 10:30 p.m., Sarah yawned, stretched, and headed down the hall. At 11 p.m., Liam turned off the living room lights. The house was dark. Now, I said, pushing myself up from the sofa. The pain in my hip was a dull, heavy throb, but the rage was a fire that burned hotter. Margot, how? They think I am in a hospital bed, confused and sedated. 20 minutes away, I said, grabbing the pair of crutches Brenda kept in her closet. They are asleep. They are comfortable. They will never expect this. They will not even have the alarm set. Because why would they? The victim is secure. Brenda did not argue. The 10-minute drive was silent. She killed the headlights and parked at the end of the block, 2 houses down from mine. Be fast, she whispered, her hands white-knuckling the steering wheel. I will be right here. If you are not back in 15 minutes, I am calling 911. To hell with the consequences. I nodded. Getting out of the car was an agony. I settled the crutches under my arms. My real, physical pain, a counterpoint to the mission's urgency. I did not go up my driveway. I cut through my neighbor's backyard, moving slowly in the deep shadows of the hedges, the damp grass soaking my hospital-issued slippers. I reached the large, flat rock by my garden gnome. My fingers fumbled in the cold dirt beneath it until they hit the small, metal case. The spare key to the basement door. Mark had insisted we keep it there for emergencies. I never dreamed this would be the emergency. The lock on the bulkhead door was stiff, but it turned with a dull click that sounded as loud as a gunshot in the silent yard. I eased the wooden door open, wincing at the creak, and navigated the steep basement stairs on my crutches, one agonizing step at a time. The basement was cold and smelled of dust and laundry detergent. I moved past the furnace, my heart hammering against my ribs, and up the stairs to the kitchen. The house was completely still. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator. And then I smelled it. Sarah's perfume. A heavy, sweet gardenia scent that clung to the air. She had sprayed it everywhere, marking my territory as her own. It made me want to gag. I moved through the dark house, a ghost navigating my own life. I reached the hallway. There it was. My office. I tried the knob. Locked. Just as I knew it would be. Sarah must have the key. I could not break it down. I could not pick the lock. I leaned my head against the cool wood, frustration rising. Think. Margot. Think. And then I remembered. The closet. The deep hall closet where we stored the vacuum and old board games. Mark had complained for years that the office got stuffy, 20 years ago. He had installed a small, passive air vent, an old-fashioned grill that connected the office to the closet, hoping to improve the circulation. I opened the closet door. It was dark, smelling of mothballs. I felt along the back wall. behind the hanging coats. My fingers hit the cold metal of the vent grill. It was held in by 4 simple screws. I fumbled in my pocket for my keys, using the edge of the house key as a makeshift screwdriver. The old screws turned easily, one by one. They dropped onto the carpet. I pulled the grill free. A square of blackness, maybe 10 inches by 10 inches, stared back at me. It was far too small for me to crawl through, especially with my hip. I was stuck. But my phone could go through. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I pulled my phone from my robe pocket. My old burner phone long gone. This was my smartphone Brenda had retrieved from my purse at the hospital. I switched it to camera mode. I turned on the flash. I took a deep breath, braced myself on my crutches, and pushed my arm through the dark, dusty opening, up to my elbow. I was blind. I could not see what I was aiming at. I just angled the phone's lens down, toward where I knew my desk was. I hit the volume button, taking a picture. Click. I angled it left. Click, click. I angled it right. Click, click, click. I swept my arm in a wide arc, just taking as many pictures as I could. The brilliant white flash illuminating the inside of my office in fractions of a second. Then I pulled my arm back out, my sleeve covered in cobwebs. I did not wait. I stood there in the dark closet, my heart in my throat, and opened the photo gallery. The first few photos were blurry shots of the ceiling. The next showed the leg of the desk. And then I saw it. The flash had illuminated the desktop as clearly as if it were daylight. Lying in a neat stack, right on my blotter, was the evidence. My eyes snapped to the first document. An application for a reverse mortgage from a Julian Vance private lenders, marked approved, and at the bottom, my signature. Except it was not my signature. It was a shaky, pathetic forgery of my name. Next to it was a glossy brochure for Willow Creek Estates. A receipt was stapled to the front, marked paid in full for a $50,000 non-refundable intake deposit. And next to that, sitting right beside the stack of papers, was an unlabeled orange prescription bottle, the kind a pharmacy gives you, but with no doctor's name, no patient's name, no drug information. Just a white cap. It was filled with small white pills, the pills Sarah and Liam had been giving me. I did not feel the cold ground on my slippers as I retraced my steps through the neighbour's yard. I did not register the excruciating throb in my hip as I climbed, agonizingly, back into Brenda's car. I was numb. My entire consciousness focused on the small, glowing screen in my hand. When we got back to her apartment, I collapsed onto the sofa, but the tremor that shook my body was not from fatigue or cold. It was a vibration of pure, unadulterated rage, so profound it was almost silent. "Put them on the laptop," I said. My voice was a low rasp I did not recognize. "I want to see everything." I airdropped the photos. Brenda plugged the laptop into her large monitor. The images of my desk, illuminated by the harsh, desperate flash of my phone, filled the screen. "Zoom in!" The stack of papers. "The top one," I commanded. Brenda magnified the image. The anger evaporated, replaced by the ice-cold clarity of a data analyst. It was Exhibit A, a multi-page document titled Application for Reverse Mortgage. The lender was listed as Julian Vance Private Lenders, LLC. My name, my social security number, my address, all correct. It was marked in the top corner with a thick, red, approved. The signature, I whispered. Brenda scrolled to the last page. There it was, Margaret Thompson. But it was not me. It was a caricature of my signature, rendered by a shaky, weak hand. It was the signature of an invalid, a woman deep in her dotage, a woman who was non compos mentis. It was a forgery, and a clumsy one at that. The next page, Brenda, Exhibit B, a single sheet of paper, on crisp, expensive-looking letterhead. Harris Concierge Medicine. The title was Cognitive Capacity Assessment. My eyes scanned the text, the clinical terms leaping out like insults. Patient presence with severe memory loss. Demonstrates significant agitation and paranoia. Is no longer capable of managing her own financial or medical affairs. At the bottom was the smooth, arrogant signature of Dr. Robert Harris, and beside it, the date of the assessment. My breath hitched. Brenda saw it at the same time. "Margot," she gasped. "That date, that was the day of your surgery. You were under general anesthesia from 7 a.m. until noon." He had signed a document attesting to my mental incompetence on a day he had never even seen me. "Keep going." Exhibit C. The glossy Willow Creek Estates brochure. A receipt was stapled to the front, printed from my own bank's online portal. It confirmed a non-refundable intake deposit of $50,000 had been successfully transferred from my primary savings account, paid in full. They had paid my non-refundable ticket to a gilded prison using my own money. "And now," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. The bottle. Exhibit D. The unlabeled orange pill bottle. The small white pills inside. The photo was clear enough to see the imprint on the tablets. "You know pharmacists," I said. It was not a question. "Find out what this is?" Brenda's fingers flew across her own phone, snapping a picture of the screen and sending it to a trusted colleague who worked the night shift at a 24-hour pharmacy. "He will answer," she said, her face grim. While we waited, I picked up my phone. The rage was gone. All I felt was the clean, cold hum of necessity. I dialed the number I had known for my entire adult life. It was 3 a.m, but I did not care. Answering service, Mr. Davies's office. "This is Margaret Thompson. I need to speak to him immediately. It is a critical financial emergency." A minute later, a groggy, irritated voice came on the line. "Margaret, what is it? Is your hip okay?" "David," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. "I am at Brenda Riley's apartment. My son and daughter-in-law are in the process of a coordinated, fraudulent liquidation of my entire estate. They have retained a complicit doctor to have me declared incompetent and have already paid a deposit to move me into a long-term care facility. They have forged my signature on a reverse mortgage application." There was dead silence on the line. David Davies had managed my late husband's estate. He had seen my signature on hundreds of documents for 20 years. "I have photographic proof of the forgery, the medical assessment, and the wire transfers." I continued. "I need you at your office at 8 a.m, and I need you to bring the most ruthless fraud litigator you employ." David's voice was suddenly, terrifyingly awake. "8 a.m. Margaret, we will be ready." I hung up, just as I did. Brenda's phone chimed with an incoming text. She read it, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with a new, sick horror. "What?" I demanded. She turned the screen to me, her hand shaking. The message read, "Brenda, where the hell did you get this? That pill is haloperidol. It's a powerful antipsychotic. We use it for schizophrenia. extreme agitation. You never give this to a geriatric patient, especially not post-op. It causes severe confusion, lethargy, hallucinations. It's a chemical restraint. This isn't medication. B. This is abuse. I stared at the text, the final piece of the puzzle sliding into place with a devastating click. The bitter water, the stronger pills, the confusion, the loopiness Sarah had bragged about. They had not just been waiting for me to become confused. They had not just been exaggerating my symptoms. They had been actively, systematically poisoning me. They were manufacturing the evidence, day by day, pill by pill, creating the very symptoms their paid doctor could diagnose. The reality was not that I was a burden. The reality was that this was not just fraud. This was a cold, calculated, medical and financial execution. At 8 a.m. sharp, Brenda wheeled me into the hushed, wood-panelled conference room of David Davies. The fury I had felt in the early morning hours had settled into a cold, dense singularity of purpose. David, a man whose professional life was built on order and contracts, was staring at the projections of the forged signature and the fraudulent medical assessment. His face was pale, his jaw set so tight it looked like it might crack. "This is not a civil matter, Margaret," he said, his voice a low growl that I had never heard in 20 years. "This is a criminal conspiracy. Forgery, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud are just the appetizers. What they are doing with this haloperidol," he spat the name, "that is aggravated assault. That is poisoning. We are not just suing them. We are ending them." He began to pace, his energy filling the room. "The police will need more. They see a confused old woman and a caring son. They will call it a family dispute. We cannot let that happen. We need to catch them in the act of finalizing the fraud." He pointed at the photos. "They have the mortgage. They have the deposit for Willow Creek. But they still need that final asset transfer signed. They need you to sign it while you are visibly incompetent. That is their legal insurance." A plan formed, cold and sharp. "So I will go back," I said. Brenda started to object, but I raised my hand. "It is the only way. They have to believe I am still the confused, drugged victim. They have to try to get that signature." David nodded, his eyes hard. "She is right. It is a trap, and they will walk right into it." He got on the phone. First, to the senior vice president of fraud at my bank, a man he had golfed with for a decade. He explained the situation, sent the encrypted photos. "I want a silent flag on everything," David commanded. "I want to be alerted if a single dime moves. But do not freeze the account. Let them think they are still in control." His second call was to a detective sergeant he knew in the Denver Police Department's Economic Crimes Unit. "David Davies, I have an active, high-value elder fraud case in progress. I have chemical endangerment, medical conspiracy, and forgery. I am sending you the preliminary file. I need a team ready to move this afternoon. We are going to hand them to you on a silver platter." By noon, the pieces were in place. Brenda made the final call, stepping out into the hallway. Her voice, when she spoke to Liam, was a masterpiece of frayed nerves and exhaustion. "Liam, thank God. I am at the hospital. They are discharging her. The x-rays on her hip came back clean. They said the confusion is just post-operative, and they need the bed. They want her out this afternoon. Can you come pick her up around 2, at exactly 2 p.m.? Their car pulled into the hospital's discharge loop. Brenda had wheeled me back in through a side entrance, my extended MRI officially over, and I was waiting. I had never given a performance in my life, but in that moment, I was Meryl Streep. I slumped in the wheelchair. I let my head loll slightly to the side. I kept my eyes unfocused, blinking slowly, as if the harsh light of the atrium was too much for my muddled brain. I was every inch the senile, drugged, helpless burden they believed me to be. Liam rushed over, his face a mask of stress, but Sarah, behind him, could not hide the look in her eyes. It was not concern. It was the glint of triumph. The final obstacle was being delivered right to her door. They got me into the car. The ride home was thick with my silence and Sarah's painfully bright chatter. "You are going to feel so much better in your own bed. Margot, those hospitals are just so disorienting. Are not they? We will get you settled in." "So tired," I murmured, letting my eyelids flutter. My head. Fuzzy. They got me inside and settled me in the large recliner in the living room. The room felt stripped. My porcelain vase was gone. The silver was gone from the sideboard. They had been busy. "Let's get you your afternoon medication, Margot," Sarah said immediately, heading to the kitchen. "You missed your dose while you were at that awful hospital." She returned with the small plastic cup. Inside, I knew, was the haloperidol. She also held a glass of water. My hand trembled as I reached for it. It was not entirely an act. I took the cup. "Oh, thank you, dear. You are so good to me," I whispered. I looked around the hollow room, my gaze unfocused. Did I sign something? "Liam?" "At the hospital," the doctor said. "He said I had to sign something to leave." I looked at my son, my expression one of profound, vacant confusion. I do not remember signing anything." It was the bait, and they took it. Liam and Sarah exchanged a look. It was a glance so fast it was almost invisible. But I caught it. It was the look of shared victory, of confirmation. She is completely gone. She does not remember a thing. Liam knelt beside my chair, his face a sickening parody of compassion. "No, Mom, not yet. That was just some intake forms. They sent the last discharge paper home with us. Just a formality." He reached over to the coffee table and picked up a folded document. It was not a one-page hospital form. It was a thick sheaf of papers. From across the room, I recognized the logo at the top, Julian Vance Private Lenders, the asset transfer agreement. "It is just routine, Mum," Liam said, his voice a soft, reassuring lie. "Just to confirm you are home and in our care. We just need your signature right here." He clicked a ballpoint pen and handed it to me. He placed the document on a clipboard and laid it in my lap, his finger pointing to the signature line at the bottom of the last page. I took the pen. I let my hand shake. I was the confused, frail, helpless woman they had worked so hard to create. I squinted at the page. "Here," I whispered, my voice reedy. "Just right here. Right there. Mom," Sarah said, her voice tight with anticipation. I lowered the pen. The blue plastic tip hovered, 1 millimeter above the paper, 1 millimeter from signing away my home, my future, my life. Ding-dong. The sound of the doorbell was loud, sharp, and absolute. It sliced through the quiet room, making Liam and Sarah both jump as if they had been shot. Liam shot an irritated look at the door. Who could that be? He muttered, his frustration palpable. They were 1 second from closing the deal, 1 second from victory. "Just get rid of them," Sarah hissed, her eyes fixed on the pen in my hand. Liam, his face a mask of annoyance, walked to the front door and pulled it open. Standing on the porch was not a delivery driver. It was David Davies, my lawyer, dressed in a severe charcoal suit. He was flanked by 2 other people, a man and a woman, both in equally somber business attire, radiating an aura of cold, corporate authority. Liam's frustration instantly curdled into confusion. "Mr. Davies, what are you doing here?" David Davies did not smile. He spoke in a loud, clear, projecting voice, a voice designed to carry to every corner of my living room. "Hello, Liam? We are here for our 2 p.m. appointment. The one I scheduled with you and Sarah to discuss the highly irregular activity on Margaret Thompson's accounts." From the other side of the room, Sarah made a small, strangled sound. She emerged from the kitchen, her face a ghostly white, her knuckles gripping the back of a dining chair. We do not have an appointment. We did not schedule any meeting. You must be mistaken." "Oh, I am sure you did not schedule it," David said, his voice cutting. He took a single, decisive step, crossing the threshold into my home. The 2 bankers followed him like shadows. They did not wait for an invitation. They were not guests. Liam stumbled back. You cannot just walk in here." I let the pen droop in my hand, my head tilting in practiced confusion. "Who is it?" "Liam," I called out, my voice quavering. "Is it that nice, Dr. Harris? Dear, is he here to check on me?" My words seemed to snap Liam into action, but the wrong action. He put his hands up, trying to physically bar them from coming further into the living room. "My mother is very unwell. She is confused. You are upsetting her. You need to leave. Right now." The woman in the suit, Ms. Wells, stepped forward, her eyes as cold as a bank vault. She held up a badge. "We are from the bank's fraud investigation unit, Mr. Thompson. We are here specifically because your mother is unwell." Her voice was sharp, precise, and held no room for argument. "We are here to investigate a red flag on a reverse mortgage application, filed in your mother's name just 2 days ago, which was funded using a highly questionable power of attorney document." The words reverse mortgage and power of attorney hung in the air, electric and damning. Sarah's face, already pale, crumpled. She understood immediately. It was not just my signature they were after. It was the entire paper trail, the documents in the office, the forgery, the medical assessment, the unlabeled pills. She made her choice. With a cry of pure animal panic, Sarah bolted. She shoved the dining chair aside and sprinted, not for the back door, but for my office. She had to destroy the evidence. She had to get to the file. She was so focused on the desk that she did not see the 4th person who had been standing quietly in the entryway, right behind the bankers. Julian, the appraiser, the lender. He had clearly been scheduled to arrive right after the signing, probably to pick up the executed documents and the first of the liquidated art. He had walked, entirely unnoticed, into the middle of the sting. Julian's eyes flicked from David Davies to the bankers, to the badge Ms. Wells was still holding. His slick, professional veneer dissolved in an instant. I saw the flash of raw, rat-like terror. He knew what bank fraud meant. He knew what a questionable power of attorney meant for him. He was not just an appraiser. He was the source of the fraudulent loan. He did not say a word. He just spun on his heel and tried to run. He made it 2 steps back toward the front door before his escape was blocked. 2 large men in casual jackets, who had been standing just outside the doorway, stepped in simultaneously. They were not bankers. "Julian Vance," one of them said. Julian froze, his hands half raised. "Detective Michaels, Denver PD," the man said, showing his badge. "We would like you to stay. We have a few questions for you about your lending practices." The room exploded. Julian was spun around and cuffed before he could even process what was happening. Sarah, seeing her escape route to the office blocked by one detective and her partner in crime cuffed by another, let out a piercing shriek. "We did not do anything. You cannot be in here. She is my mother. She is demented. She does not know what she is saying." She agreed to all of it. And then I moved. I did not ask for my walker. I did not wait for help. I dropped the pen and the clipboard to the floor. I planted my hands on the arms of the recliner, and with a single, excruciating push, I stood up. I stood on my own 2 feet. The pain from my hip was a white-hot fire, but the strength of my rage was a furnace. I was not a frail old woman. I was a 58-year-old woman, standing tall in my own living room. The acting was over. The room went completely silent. Liam's jaw dropped. Sarah's screaming rant died in her throat. They were staring at me as if they had just seen a ghost rise from the grave. "No," I said, and my voice was not the reedy, confused whisper from 3 minutes ago. It was the voice that had run a data analytics department for 20 years. It was cold, it was clear, and it was absolute. No, I did not agree. I locked my eyes on my son. Liam could not meet my gaze. He was staring at my legs, at the way I was standing, as if I had just grown a new head. "The water," I said, my voice low and cutting. "The sleepy water every night. The pain medication you gave me from an unlabeled bottle. The forged cognitive assessment from your friend, Dr. Harris. The $50,000 deposit to Willow Creek Estates." I took a step toward him. The pain in my hip, a grounding, focusing force. "The illegal reverse mortgage on my paid-off house. The auctioning of your father's artwork. The manila folder you hid. Sarah, when you thought I was too drugged to notice." That is her paranoia," Sarah shrieked, looking desperately at the bankers. "This is what we were talking about. She makes up stories. We have the file from Dr. Harris. We have a file, too." "Ms. Wells," the banker said calmly. She pulled a tablet from her briefcase. "We have the video file, provided by Mrs. Thompson this morning, from her own internal security camera." She turned the screen, and there, on the high-definition display, was my living room from 2 days prior. I watched my own son and daughter-in-law. I watched them discussing my vase. And then I heard Liam's voice, clear as a bell, from the tablet's speaker. "She will not even notice. We just increase the dose slowly. It is subtle. By the time we call Dr. Harris, she will look completely consistent with the file." That was the moment Liam broke. He did not just cry. He collapsed. He sank to his knees on the hardwood floor, a terrible, guttural sob tearing out of him. "It was her," he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at his wife. "It was all Sarah. She found the lender. She found Dr. Harris. She said I was weak. She said we deserved it, that you were just going to die anyway and leave it all to some charity. I just..." I just wanted a better life. The confession, so pathetic and so total, hung in the air. But Sarah did not cry. Her face, which had been white with panic, turned a deep, mottled red. Her terror was consumed by pure, unadulterated venom. She looked at me, at the woman who had ruined everything simply by refusing to be a victim. "You old bitch," she snarled. "You ruined it. You ruined everything." She lunged, not at Liam, not at the police, but at me. Her hands were clawed, aimed at my face. She never made it. Brenda, who had slipped in behind the detectives, moved with the speed of an ER nurse. She intercepted Sarah with a solid shoulder check, shoving her hard into the wall. "Get off her!" Brenda roared. In an instant, the second detective had Sarah, twisting her arms behind her back, the click of the handcuffs echoing the sound of Julian's. The lead detective stepped into the center of the room. "Liam Thompson, Sarah Thompson," he said, his voice booming in the sudden quiet. "You are both under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and aggravated elder abuse." He nodded toward Brenda. "We have a pharmacist's report on the haloperidol you were administering without a prescription. That adds felony assault and poisoning to the list. You will be processed downtown." I stood by the empty sideboard, my hip throbbing, and I watched. I watched as my son, sobbing and incoherent, was hauled to his feet and cuffed. I watched as his wife, silent and vibrating with hate, was led out of my home, the house they had tried to steal, the life they had tried to end. And then, they were gone. The front door closed, and for the first time in months, my house was truly, finally, silent. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so glad I could share it with you. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and if you can, please support us by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.